Listen is the first word in the Rule of Saint Benedict, that 1,500-year-old guide for not only monastic living, people who live in abbeys and monasteries, but also it's applicable for those of us who are out in the rest of the world. It's a rule that I do my best to live into. The first word is listen. And in Latin, the word audire is the root word for listen, and it's also the root word for obey. Listen and obey come from the same root in the Latin. And I expect that this kind of intuitively makes sense to us, doesn't it? Because we need to do more than just listen, to audibly hear the words kind of in the background like Charlie Brown's teacher, right? Wah, wah, wah. But we actually need to take those words to heart and do our best to obey. That's what Benedict was getting at. It's not so much just to listen to the words of God, but also do your best to pattern your life after Jesus, to follow Jesus. To listen well is to obey. I think St. Peter finally figured this out in today's reading from the Acts of the Apostles. St. Peter finally figured out that he needed to stop for a moment and listen. Sometimes uncharacteristic for Peter, you will remember a man who acted on impulse. Last Sunday, when he found out that it was Jesus on the beach, Peter put his clothes back on and jumped into the water just like that. An impulsive man, Peter. But in today's story, we hear something different. We have the disciple, Dorcas, Tabitha. Scholars tell us that the word that they used in the Greek that Luke used for disciple, he attached a feminine ending to, which is unusual. Usually the default is masculine. And we think that his use of the feminine for disciple means that Dorcas, Tabitha, was a leader in her community, someone of importance, known for her devotion, known for her good works and service, and also, as we talked about a minute ago, known for her handicrafts. She died. And as was the custom, they washed her body, her friends, and laid her out and sent for Peter, who they knew was in the next town over. They made no request of Peter other than, please come. It's very important. They didn't ask Peter to do anything but show up. And when Peter got to that room in Joppa where the body of Tabitha, Dorcas, was, Peter shooed everybody out of the room. And then did you catch what he did? He knelt down and he prayed. How uncharacteristic of the impulsive one to kneel and to pray. Now, Lord knows there have been way too many books written about prayer, how to pray, what it is, how to do it right, how to do it wrong, all kinds of words about prayer. But I think at its best, ultimately, prayer is about listening for the voice of Jesus. Prayer is about pausing and listening for the voice of Jesus. Now, in this story in the Acts of the Apostles, we don't know what Peter's intent making his way to the body of Dorcas, to Tabitha, was. Remember, nobody asked him to do anything. And the story doesn't tell us that Peter planned to do anything. He did the most important thing, which was to show up and to pray and to listen for the voice of Jesus. And I suspect that somewhere in his time of prayer, in his silence of listening, he heard the voice of Jesus say, Peter, call her by her name, which he did. She opened her eyes saw him, he helped her up. He returned her to her friends and to her community. And many people began to believe in Jesus because of this. It's a powerful example for any of us who are prone to act on impulse or prone to spend our times in prayer doing all the talking rather than sitting in silence to listen for the voice of the one who knows us each by name. Peter went into the situation with no preconceived notions. He waited to hear the word of Jesus before he proceeded. I wonder in your own lives if you have ever had times where you have intentionally sat yourself in prayer and listened for the voice of Jesus. Maybe you were in the middle of some kind of turmoil, some kind of struggle, some kind of conflict or decision. And you put yourself in the presence of and at the mercy of Jesus, the Good Shepherd. And when we're at our best, we can put our needs before Jesus. We can verbalize them either out loud or through the mouths of our hearts. But prayer at its best is zipping our lips and opening these up, whether they're the ears here or the ears here, so we can listen for his voice. We do this in parish ministry all the time. We face different kinds of deaths all the time. Yes, there are the physical deaths of our beloved members and their families, but I'm talking more about the normal life cycle in the life and ministry of a parish. Ministries that start out and flourish and maybe reach an end of their usefulness. Sometimes even to the point where we think they might be dead. How important it is in the parish setting, instead of either rushing to resurrect and resuscitate them, or to give them too hasty a burial, what would it be to sit in silence and listen for the voice of Jesus, who may very well tell us, this particular ministry served a wonderful purpose. Let's celebrate its life. Let's give thanks for what it did. And let's give it a proper burial. Sometimes that happens. We know as Christians that new life can only come out of death. But other times, in the life and ministry of the parish, we may sit in silence and Jesus may say to us, let's resurrect and revive this ministry, perhaps not in the exact way that it was, because that seemed no longer to be working, but perhaps there's a new way to do an old thing and to do it well. I suspect that when Tabitha was resurrected, she approached her new life in a way that was different from the old. No doubt she kept her devotion. No doubt she kept her skill at handicraft. But I suspect something in her fundamentally changed, don't you? Wouldn't you if you were raised from the dead? So it's a great lesson and opportunity for we of us who are part of this or any parish community, when we think that there is death, to listen for the voice of Jesus, who may be telling us to do one thing or another, and either way to do that well and with grace and with dignity and with hope and with love. Jesus says he is the Good Shepherd. He knows and calls his flock, that's you and me, each by name. And we're supposed to listen to his voice. And what does he say? My sheep not only listen, but they follow, which suggests a kind of obedience, right? We are all under orders by virtue of our baptisms. We have all made promises, renewed promises, had promises made for us on how we will be God's people in the world. I share in those baptismal covenant promises, and I am also under additional orders as an ordained minister of God. I have visible signs and symbols of that: collar and cassock and zucchetto and stole. I've pledged obedience to the rubrics of the Book of Common Prayer, which guides our prayer and our worship together. I've pledged obedience to the canons of the Church, which govern our common life. And I've promised obedience to my bishop. In each of those promises that I have made, and in each of the promises that you have made by virtue of your baptism, these are human-designed, human-led things that we hope at their best mediate and transmit the voice of Jesus. We do our best as people, as human beings with the gifts that we have been given. But those are nothing but mediators of the voice of Jesus, important and vital to our life as a people of God as they are. But that does not take away our individual opportunity and responsibility to find time every day at our best, at a regular time, in a regular space, where we can put ourselves intentionally in the presence of God, in the presence of Jesus, who of course is with us always. But when we have that intent, we remember that. And then to sit in silence and listen for the one who calls us by name, and see what he would have us do with our day and with our lives. Listen, obey. Amen.